All right, this is Professor Olson doing the week 4 Critique Friday edition. First up, Melissa. Melissa, great process here doing the sketches, trying to figure out how to work things out. I see a lot of good ideas going on. Key thing is sort of keeping the hierarchy on that primary display panel. Keep in mind that these bottom flaps aren't really visible unless you pick it up and look at the bottom. And if you put the logo, if you have the logo here, you probably don't need it up here as well. But I think you're off to a great start and you're planning. You've sort of come up with their varieties as well. So can't wait to see how that comes out. Brittany, you have made some progress here. So this, you got a few bubbles using black, blue, red, and white. So as you consider other colors, you know, maybe there's a very light blue that could be the bubbles. Use white lines instead of black and they'll feel cleaner. You've sort of embraced some of the branding here. You still have a drop shadow or something there that just makes it look kind of dirty. But you really need, I think this is the primary display panel on this one, not this here. And then you need the net weight, you need ingredients. Go to places like the dye line and look up soap and see what people use for that. And a little more variety. I mean, if you're going to use some bubbles, maybe there's more of them, maybe they're on the handle. So a little more creativity. You need to have 3 versions. This is one version, so make sure you keep working on that. Next up, Carlos, dark wave. You've got the net weight. You don't have ingredients yet. You don't really have a descriptor line or anything here. Your color palette is monochromatic, which is okay, but I would love to see some pop, something. Maybe like a light yellow or something would give it some pop, some focus somewhere in here. These pentagonal star things are going to be covered up by these panels, these flaps. When you look at the packaging, you can see how that left and right panel, this left flap, this right flap, they lay on top and cover up whatever's on these panels here under the handle. So keep that in mind as you work on this. You need 2 other versions too. So experiment with some more colors, widen your color palette out, create more contrast. I think you'll be happier. Vincent, this has come along nicely. Just a couple things I was going to point out. So this fist on the top here, when you look at this pitch lid, only half of the fist is going to come through, and it might look really odd. So when you assemble it, you have to consider that. I might put the whole fist on this flap so that it comes over full strength over here. Take this shape is as just a rectangle that's perfectly aligned. I would go ahead and maybe make the sides mirror the parallel to the slanted verticals so that it just sort of fits in there a little better. And then if you take that shape and put it like a sort of inner glow of some dark color, it'll give it a little effect like it's a shadow. Wonderful secondary illustration. The branding's coming through loud and clear. Nutritional Facts probably has to have a white background, unfortunately. This green on this orange, these are 2 colors that are essentially sort of opposites, but not quite. And they're the same value, so it creates this vibration. You want to make one or the other darker. I'd probably take that green and make it much darker so that it doesn't have that vibration there. But this is a great first step. You got to do 2 more. Thad, the same thing goes with your flaps. You've done some good work here. The design looks good. You know, you've got some good elements. What you need to do is configure them so they work on the layout. I would shrink all this down considerably so that your logo can exist, you know, fully on the front panel, because the way it is right now, as I showed you in Photoshop, it will be covered over. Your logo will be invisible when it's assembled. So keep that in mind. This secondary font and the illustration of the cheese straws is awesome. It just is taking up too much space. You need to have room for your logo and probably knock the type down so it's a little smaller. This looks like a sort of loving cup with a chili pepper. And I see you got a chili pepper background. I don't know if you've added that as a set. You've created a new version of the flavor. And you've got our story. You've got some really good things going on here. This pattern, so if you see the angle of this pattern, these flaps and these flaps will go perpendicular to each other. So the pattern will shift and go at the wrong angle. So I wouldn't try to keep the same pattern on both of these things. I would have, if you have a pattern, maybe put it on these flaps so they can be seen on the top and not have it on these panels there. If you try to assemble one of these, you'll see what I'm talking about. But just as you're aware of that, I think you have like all these great elements. You just need to sort of pull them together in the layout and do two other versions. Decoya, you're making great progress. It's coming along nicely. Your logo, I still can't read Granny's. More contrast. Maybe there's some yellow or, you know, golden brown color that Granny's, the word Granny's could be filled. I still don't love this configuration of the logo. The type should be much bigger compared to the icon. This outside star element is just sort of extra stuff, and I don't know why you feel the need to include that. The heart, splash heart, and the Granny's type is enough for your logo. Just use a color palette that has good contrast. You're doing it here on the sides, and you can do it on the front too. I think that you'll be happier if you take out this pointed star element, because for one thing, it doesn't actually sort of relate to the brand. Like, it's not anything that I can recognize or feel like it's part of it. And it just sort of makes it difficult to work with the good elements that you have, like these pictures of fudge, which could maybe be bigger. Adults only. This is a pretty stark warning, but funny because you get the brand. The color contrast on the flaps seems good. So there's a lot of good things going on here. I just would love for that star element to go away and good contrast on the type. All right. Over here, we got Justin. This Boise beef jerky, this is a great exploration of 3 options. Your primary display panel is a little stark. It doesn't really work, I don't think, when it wraps this much around. So you never really see, like on the shelf, you just see Eef Jur. So it really doesn't work that well. You need a descriptor line. There are other elements. This looks super stark. If you go to the die line, and look, here's a beef jerky. So made in the USA, there's a flavor, they've got a USDA stamp, feed the need, they've got a tagline, they've got an indication how spicy it is. So consider like adding some of these elements to give it a little more, you know, sort of flesh it out, so to speak. But you've done a good exploration so far. You need to have the net weight on the front. Just make sure you've got all the required elements on the front panels. This one is definitely my favorite. It's got the most going on with it. Descriptor line, flavor perhaps, net weight. It won't ruin it, trust me. I think it'll make it more realistic. So Samantha, Tortuga, jelly beans. You've come a long way on this. It's looking much better without the black type. I hope you agree. I think that looks really great the way you've got this set up now. You could maybe add a paper texture to this. You've got this Caribbean blue and a gradient that's kind of working. I'm not a super fan of this tan colored jelly beans because you have the bright colors and purple, and then this is like really sort of knocking it back considerably. So I would reconsider this element in particular, that pattern with that brown, but everything else is working really well, and you need to have 2 other versions. All right, Michaela, this is good progress. Again, this monochromatic palette or this analogous palette needs a little bright spot, maybe some rich purple or bright yellow or something to sort of give it a little pop and some feeling. You need to have the net weight. Go to the die line, look at chocolate packaging, see what they do, what kind of things they add. But you've done a good exploratory with 3 options. I just would love to see your color palette come to life a little more. It feels like it's trying to hide. This has to have a white background, nutritional facts, so good job. Sarah, Cactus Cookies, you've wrangled this one and tackled it to the ground. I think you got it. I think you finally got this. This has been tough. I think all these work. Yeah, you'd have the net weight. It'd be great to have a descriptor line or a flavor descriptor or something, you know. What are these things like? Maybe this one's the best. Everywhere it's white, I always say, could it be a color? Could it be a nice toasty brown or something? You've got some interesting cookie images, and look how nicely you line this up in the frame. So you're doing some good work here. Probably just some tweaks to get it over the finish line. You've found those extra elements. That's great. Good job, Sarah. All right, so that's all we've got for today. I hope that's helpful. This is my last live session, but of course I'll be around all weekend on Slack if you need help. I'm looking forward to seeing your final projects.